Erano europei 70 anni fa, in un'epoca in cui nessuno in Europa era europeo, fatta eccezione per gli ebrei con una tradizione secolare come i miei genitori. Sono venuti a Gerusalemme non perché spinti da una qualche ideologia o da ambizioni colonialistiche, bensì perché furono cacciati dall'Europa da altri europei. Era una situazione molto difficile per un bambino come me. Erano persone distrutte e io mi ribellavo a questo. Oggi nella mia vita sono arrivato a un punto in cui non sono più arrabbiato con loro. Non voglio più voltare loro le spalle. Infatti ho scritto Storia d'amore e di tenebra, che è la storia della mia famiglia, con un misto di pietà e humor e ironia e tristezza e soprattutto una grande curiosità. Se dovessi rispondere a questa domanda con una parola, direi che il mio rapporto con il mio patrimonio culturale è un rapporto di intensa curiosità, di curiosità piena di compassione. Perché i miei genitori parlavano tra loro in polacco e russo per non farsi capire da me. Il 90% delle volte non volevano farsi capire non perché parlavano di sesso, bensì perché parlavano di storia ed era terribile per un bambino. Quindi a casa di solito parlavano polacco e russo. Leggevano libri in tedesco, francese e inglese per motivi culturali. Penso sognassero in Yiddish, ma a me hanno insegnato soltanto l'ebraico, non per sciovinismo, bensì perché temevano che se avessi conosciuto anche soltanto una lingua europea, un giorno avrei potuto essere attratto dal fascino fatale dell'Europa, andare in Europa e trovare la morte. Quindi per la mia sicurezza non vollero insegnarmi nessuna lingua europea. Tannica che passava.
Ladies and gentlemen, please imagine a small village at the foot of a volcano that is about to erupt. The volcano trembles and quakes all night, emits smoke and sparks, growls and rumbles, and from time to time sends red-hot boulders rolling down into the village. All of us, everywhere, really live on the slopes of an active volcano. Perhaps the Middle Eastern volcano is more active than that of Europe. But every human being, in every place and in every era, lives close by despair, fear, and catastrophe. Loneliness, disappointment, failure, alienation, accident, disease, age, decline, and death always lie in wait for each and every one of us, just beyond the walls of our homes.
Il ruolo dello scrittore a nome di tutti. Posso rispondere a questa domanda soltanto alla prima persona singolare. Cerco di lavorare come un medico di famiglia o come il dottore di un paesino che cerca di prescrivere ai pazienti un certo relativismo, un po' di autocritica e un po' di realismo e di pragmatismo. Nei miei romanzi ho raccomandato ai lettori di cercare di immaginare l'altro. Quando mi rivolgo al pubblico israeliano e a quello palestinese dico cercate di immaginare l'altro. Immaginare l'altro, secondo me, è l'imperativo morale.
Now the question is, does the writer from the village below the volcano also have some sort of moral or social or political responsibility? Does he have to raise his voice in protest every day, perhaps just once a week? A writer works with words. From morning to night, he is surrounded by the chips and sawdust of his language, just as a carpenter is surrounded by the vapors of wood and glue. This imposes on the writer a responsibility to language. Anywhere that words full of hatred are wielded like hatchets against particular groups of human beings, a physical hatchet will soon appear. The writer can serve as the language's fireman, or at least as its smoke detector. He can, and therefore he must. So a writer who makes his living off the language must cry out when the language is raped. And since he makes a living by imagining himself to be other people, perhaps he is also obliged to help people imagine themselves as other people. Even outside his literary work, on the street, in the yard, in the political arena. To imagine the other, not necessarily to love the other, not necessarily to agree with the other, not necessarily to support the opinions of the other, only sometimes to imagine yourself standing in the other's place. I never advocated loving one's enemy. I never advocated make love, not war. But I always sought to compromise with my enemy. Make peace, not love. Bad news morning and night. So I have come here this evening to bring a bit of good news. Ladies and gentlemen, a great majority of Israeli Jews and a great majority of Palestinian Arabs are already prepared for a pragmatic compromise and for a two-state solution. Prepared, not happy. Public opinion polls, both in Israel and in Palestine, week after week after week, show that the patient, Israeli and Palestinian, is prepared unenthusiastically for an operation that will create two neighboring states. The patient has already reconciled himself more or less to the necessity of this operation, but the doctors are cowards. By doctors, I mean the leaders on both sides. All this will come in the not very distant future, because both peoples are already prepared, not happy but prepared, for a solution of practical compromise.
La soluzione per Gerusalemme, lasciare alcune questioni aperte. Di chi sono i luoghi santi non è urgente. Centinaia di migliaia di profughi palestinesi che marciscono nei campi da 60 anni, questo è urgente. Israele che vive all'ombra del terrore e dei terroristi suicidi, questo è urgente. I palestinesi che soffrono l'occupazione, e questo è urgente. Per i luoghi santi aspettiamo e vedremo, lui verrà e ce lo dirà. E forse anziché un uomo sarà una donna.
The Arab conflict is not a Western, it is a tragedy. It is a tragedy in the ancient sense of the word tragedy. It is a clash between right and right, between two justices. The Palestinian Arabs are in Palestine simply because Palestine is their homeland. They have no other homeland in the world. The Israeli Jews are in Israel because over thousands of years there was no other country in which the Jews could, as a nation, feel at home. As individuals, yes, sometimes. As a nation, the Jews never had a homeland other than Israel. Half the Israeli Jews were, like my family, booted out of Europe. The other half, let us not forget, were booted out or fled by the skin of their teeth from the lands of the Arabs and the Muslims. So neither the Palestinians nor the Israelis have anywhere else to go, because there is no way to force them to become one happy family. Israelis and Palestinians are not one family, they are two unhappy families. The little house they live in must be divided up into two even smaller apartments in which they can begin to live as next-door neighbors. Something like the velvet divorce between the Czechs and the Slovaks. It is all so painfully simple, and it will become reality because there is no other way. Of intersection between my politics and my literary work is located here in Dr. Chekhov's village infirmary. After all, You will almost never find in my novels and stories good guys versus bad guys, villains versus victims, heroes versus scoundrels. If you were to force me to tell you with a single word what story I tell in all the volumes I have written, I would say in one word, families. If you allow me 2 words, I will say unhappy families. And if you have patience for more than 2 words, you might as well sit down and read my books.